Few will disagree that the virus has dramatically changed our world. Many high-tech employees are now mostly working from home, making cloud security more critical than ever before. Disinformation and social engineering hacks abound and are only expected to rise in number. What will this new world look like? How can we prepare for the risks that are yet to come? Our first speaker to answer some of those questions is Gil Shwed, founder and CEO of Check Point. Gil, the stage is yours.
Hi, Gil. Good afternoon. And it really is a pleasure to be here with you today during our Cyber Week online. If you recall, we met last year. I was part of the CyberNext Canadian delegation that went to Tel Aviv and had a roundtable with you and some of your leadership team. And boy, the world has certainly changed a lot since then. So to get us going, I would like to first ask, how are you doing personally, and how's Check Point doing in this very challenging times?
So indeed, since last year, our entire world turned upside down in a way I think we couldn't anticipate. And at least personally, I'm doing very well. I'm locked at home for the last 6 months or 7 months, I think is 7 months now. But I'm actually quite enjoying it. I'm spending more time with my family. I have 6 kids at home, so we are not bored, and it's never lonely here. It's always busy. And I must tell you that professionally or personally, I'm very proud that I was able to turn my entire work environment upside down. I mean, I used to be a person that always believed in going to the office every day and traveling abroad around the world at least once a month, usually twice a month. And suddenly we have to manage our entire life in a different way, virtually. I mean, like we're living in a science fiction movie. And again, personally, I'm very proud that I was able to move to that. I'm also very proud because the internet is at the end today. I mean, we don't always recognize it, but became the very, very critical lifeline of our business. Everything that we used to do is now internet. We used to meet in person. It's now virtual. We used to buy in the grocery store, and we knew that we can order from the supermarket online. Now we try to, as much as we can, order online. I haven't gotten into a store in 6-7 months, and everything is working through the internet. And I think you, Shlomo, and many other people, most of the audience here, should be very, very proud for keeping it running. And I mean, it was almost, I mean, for us as users, it was pretty much seamless. The internet kept working, and being part of the internet, I'm very proud that at least that part of the world continued to work.
That's great. Yeah, we find here in Canada, more or less the exact same norms have been implemented, and we're living the exact same way. So as you can imagine with this pandemic right now, first is it's not often that a customer gets the opportunity to put the CEO of his supplier on the hot seat. So I've taken the liberty to craft some questions, but they're all really centered around this new world that that we're living in right now. So, what are some of the biggest changes you have seen in the cyberspace now that we're living under this pandemic?
So I think what we've seen is that first, a big shift is towards securing people that are working from home. And I think if we think about the environment, we used to think that, we needed to control all the points and all the potential attack vectors to enterprise, remote people, IoT, of course, cloud and the network and the servers. But there was a very strong focus that we keep the core of our network secure, and everything around that is, I wouldn't say secondary, but if we keep the core secure, if we keep the offices, the data center secure, we are okay. And I think the balance has shifted a lot because everything opened up. If I look at our customers' manufacturing floors, manufacturing was a closed network. You managed to control the network and it was fine. Suddenly, even to manufacturing environment, you need remote access because the vendors can't come in and the vendors needs to maintain the machines. We're seeing it in critical infrastructure, and we've seen attack on countries' critical infrastructure, and suddenly the people who maintain that are not coming every day and physically checking all the sensors, and they need remote access, and hackers are taking advantage of that, and so on. And again, the remote employees challenge is, again, I think we've all move all the employees to work from home within 2 weeks. It all went successful. And I think now we need to go into the second phase of making sure not only that it works, but it is secure. Maybe I'll give you a simple example on that, and maybe it's a separate subject for a discussion, but we did a simple survey. All our employees and many of our customers and employees work from home. Many of them work from their own computer, which is great, and from their set up work environment. We did some surveys, and it turns out that less than 60% of the employees at home even have basic security on their machines, which means that if somebody, your kid is playing on the computer, you're downloading some fun stuff for you, and somebody takes over your computer, then the same computer is used to access to the core of the network. And I think we can, as security professionals, we can understand the implications of that. So that remains a challenge. The challenge is not over. I think we've just started that because we're now breathing and saying, okay, everything works. Now let's make it, now our challenge is to make it secure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I can tell you, we're living exactly the same thing. We've got about 27,000 employees worldwide. Half of them are corporate employees and the other half are factory employees. The corporate employees, we had to very quickly migrate them. Like you said, in about 2 weeks, we had to enable them at home. So we've got about 12,000 employees now working remotely. And many of them are working with their own computer. So for us, endpoint security and our network security, is a priority. And we have partnered with Checkpoint to help solve those problems today. And we're making some great progress there with your team here locally in Canada. So one of the things that we have noticed at Celestica is that the phishing attacks have significantly increased during the COVID times. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges and the things that we need to be most cautious about during this pandemic?
So first, you're absolutely right. We've seen the huge increase in phishing attacks, and again, that's because now everything is done online, from connecting from going to work, which is done online with a system that you need to put your credential before you went in the office. Now it's all virtual, to getting government aid or paying your taxes or getting any kind of service. So this is a huge field for the attackers. And by the way, we've seen the rise in these attacks all over the world. We've seen the attackers very, very focused in every country, in every geo. The attacks were focused to the exact stage of that country. For example, in the beginning of Corona, there were plenty of malicious apps and phishing attacks that are based on health information, because we all rush to know what is COVID-19, what is Corona, what do you need to do. So like application like Check Yourself, or World Health Organization information sites and applications for the mobile were all very popular, and many of them were fake and malicious. Then it turned into government aid. So when government started publishing that they are giving some aid and you need to put your bank account details and so on. And again, in each country, it was in its own language, based on the stages of the Corona and so on. And I think the attackers are taking advantage of it. I think we need to, first, we have to educate our users to be very, very careful. But again, some of these attacks, even if you are careful, it will still go through. And again, if you have 12,000 employees remote, it's enough that less than 1% of them, 0.01% of them is still enough to somebody to penetrate to the company. It's enough. It's one, it's enough, it's 12 employees that are getting through. So I think we also need to deploy faster and better tools. Again, I don't want to self-promote Checkpoint, but we have some of these tools. But I think part of it is not just what I want to promote and so on. Part of it is really building the future infrastructure. And that future infrastructure needs to deal with what we call the new cyber pandemic. We know what the biological pandemic now we have to think, how would the next cyber pandemic looks like? And if we take the analogy, because we all became experts on understanding how fast the virus moves from one person to another, the exponential growth, the number of victims that each infected person can cause. In the computer world, it's much, much worse. It's not 3 days to double the number of patients. It's 3 seconds in many cases, between 3 seconds to a few minutes. The number of computers or assets that one infected entity can cause is not the ratio is not 2 to 1, the ratio is maybe 27 to 1 on the average. It can be much worse. And the potential is for many, many of these cyber pandemic to come through. Now, what we need to build is the infrastructure that can both prevent many of these attacks and also react extremely quickly to the ones that are unknown and the ones that we still can prevent. And again, react quickly. If in the cyber pandemic we saw how the world reacted, can argue good or not so good, but the world acted. In cyber pandemic, we won't have weeks, months, and so on. We'll have, I mean, the effect, what's in the physical world was months of preparing or fighting. In the virtual world, it should be minutes if we want to stop these attacks. And I think we are building some of that infrastructure of networks that update themselves, central cloud, what we call threat cloud, that disseminate threat information. And again, not just the information, but how to turn the information into true prevention.
That's very interesting. And I've heard you talk about the cyber pandemic in the past. So what do you think are some of the things that people individually could do? Because I find human behaviors continue to be some of our highest vulnerabilities, right? So what do you think people individually could do and businesses could do to prevent or to deal with a cyber pandemic?
So I think on the individual basis, we definitely need to, on the consumer level, we need to have the latest security updates, the latest security tools, special use tools that update themselves and not just ones that update every once in a while. I think it's very, very important to deploy security not just on your personal computer, but mobile is becoming more and more important. We're seeing more and more attacks on the mobile infrastructure, and that's something that we all underestimate. Very, very few people actually install mobile security software on their mobile phone, and I think that is important. I think we need to secure our networks. When you think about the modern home, you have dozens of devices. Some of them are secure because that's your work laptop and guys like you take care of it. Some of it may be your main computer that you use, and again, you use some good endpoint security that protect it. But some of it are old devices, some of it are your kids' devices, some of it are IoT devices that you don't even know, like your TV or other or security cameras. And if you don't have good security on the residential level on your home, that can be very, very problematic. So I mean, deploying these kinds of security can also be very good. But again, the main job, I don't think that we can turn every consumer into a security expert. I think that again, our field mainly is the business side, even though we have pretty good consumer products, is how we build them very ruggedized or very strong infrastructure for the entire world and proliferate that so it will be very easy and simple to use.
That makes sense. The other thing I've heard you talked about before was the digital transformation. And clearly, as more CIOs are looking for ways to push more and more workloads over to the cloud, what do you think are some of the key considerations in today's day that we need to account for as we migrate over to the cloud and continue with our digital transformation agenda?
So I absolutely think, cloud is critical for business now. Cloud is also a huge security vulnerability. Because as I said before, if you had a data center and you installed a new server and you left the server open for installation, or somebody forgot or not forgot or left it open for the night for maintenance or anything like that, nothing happened because there were like 3-4 layers of virtual and physical security that prevented the malicious people from getting into that server. On the cloud, it's 180 degrees. The server is in the center of the internet. It's connected by 10 gig interfaces to the rest of the internet. If you left the key open, again, if I leave the key to my office outside the office, nothing happens because nobody gets there. And if somebody gets there, they'll return the key and they're not malicious. If you left the key open to any of your application, and here the key is the virtual key, but there are many, many keys to the application and they are all around and developers put them in the code, the key is automatically being picked up by automatic robots that scan the internet, and within 5 to 20 minutes, somebody will take over your server. I've seen cases like that when a developer puts some codes on GitHub, the code contains a key to some application, again, by mistake, not malicious, the employee wasn't malicious. Few minutes later, an automatic bot scans the internet, finds the key, takes over the computer, and again, if it's the list of the damage, when they take over, by the way, and they have an automatic code that takes over the account and even disable you from getting the account. If it's the good cases, it will cost you a few $1,000s because they'll use it for Bitcoin mining. If it's the bad cases, then they really steal your data, get in, maybe stay there for months and you won't notice it. And again, it may cost you hundreds and thousands of dollars by CPU cycles that will steal, and it may cost you your entire reputation and dozens or millions of dollars because of the reputation and the data that they will take. And I think the cloud from that standpoint needs much, much better security. And the cloud, by the way, it's not as easy as like servers. We're seeing more entities like serverless functions, like containers, entities that are not as easy to secure like we secured before. And maybe within the last point here, we built IT infrastructure for, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. Today we have systems that are from the 90s, not from the 2000s. We built a lot of different systems, and as we grew them, we secured them and so on. Now we are moving all that infrastructure to the cloud, plus doubling up with new methods of computing that are all very good and very beneficial that we need to secure. And I think we underestimate that. Some of it is because, again, we want to move forward with business, and that's great. And again, Corona gave it a great push. So, I mean, things that we did marginally, and, you know, there was this marginal application that few people used, again, the online ordering for the restaurant. Let's take a tiny business. Before it was 5% of the business, and one was quite marginal. You saw, you know, 2-3 orders an hour. Suddenly it became 100% of your business. So if now someone taking over that application, it's your reputation. That's how all your customers sees you. That your entire kitchen is working from that. And any damage to that, and that's usually a cloud application, immediately translates to the entire situation not working. So I think we need to put a lot of emphasis on securing the cloud, getting the highest level of security. If in the physical world, it took us 20 years or 30 years to build that infrastructure and 30 years to secure it, and we use 20 different vendors to do all kinds of things, which is not, I mean, we need to consolidate that. In the cloud, we can't afford now to bring 20 vendors. We need to jump right in and say, we're picking one platform, maybe 1 or 2 additional things to the things that we think we need to augment, or the things that were special, and we're securing everything at the highest level. And I think very few CISOs understand that. Right now, most people are still in the phase of experimenting and trying and not being sure and hoping that nothing bad will happen. I can tell you the bad things are happening and will happen because the hackers are learning all the time. And one day we will see this cyber pandemic, and every one of them will be bigger than the previous one. So if we saw a few years ago that, you know, people in hospitals needed to be operated when the hospital doesn't have their medical record and giving them the wrong blood because of WannaCry, and unfortunately these things did happen. The next cyber pandemic will be much, much worse. It will be and won't necessarily be contained easily. So I think we need to each one defend ourselves, but I think companies like us, we're trying to build this global infrastructure. It will be easy, it will be simple, and once we identify something, all the customers will be protected within seconds.
That's great. And we depend on that, Gil. I can tell you as a CIO and in my own community, I mean, the push over to the cloud is a movement not only to reduce the cost of infrastructure and be able to leverage better analytics and AI on the cloud, but really it's a play on security, because, you know, the general belief is that my data and my applications are better protected on the cloud with companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft that can afford a level of security that I could never afford. But you're absolutely right. You know, the cybersecurity on the cloud, and I would add also the compliance aspect of, data residency and user access is key, and is very important for us to be able to continue to drive the digital agenda. So we're lucky that companies like Checkpoint are actually paying attention to that, because we depend on that. So this pandemic, these challenging times that we live in, eventually will pass. But I got to believe that there's going to be a lot of great lessons learned coming out of this pandemic. What are some of those things that you think CEOs like you and CIOs like me will need to apply and keep in mind, and maybe keep as part of our everyday living post COVID-19? What do you think?
So first, I do invest significant amount of my time to understand that. At the beginning, we said, okay, we moved to this virtual world. We have to live with it. We have to face the consequences. Not all of it is great. Some of it is really painful, but it will pass. And then we moved, we switched gears, and now we're spending most of our time with how we prepare into the future. And I think there's some good lessons we can learn. First, I think we've learned that we can be much more global. On one hand, we don't fly, we don't travel. On the other hand, we connect to each other in a very flat world. One click on Zoom and we're connected to everyone. And by the way, it's for everything. If we want to do brainstorming, it's now people from all over the world. If we want to do customer meeting, it's the same thing. Management meeting, we don't need to fly people from all over the world. We now can meet every few weeks as opposed to every few months. I think we will have a new virtual hybrid model. I think we still like to meet people. We still like to travel. We still would like to go to the office. But if before it was 90% of the employees came to the office every day, I think it's in the future it will be anything from 20 to 50%. And we will be able to spend much more time home. I think we're spending a lot of time on interviewing, learning the best practices, talking to our employees, talking to other companies. People love it that they can, some people find it difficult to work from home, but the majority of the people would like to work at least some, let's put it that way. 98% of employees would like to work at least some part at home. 60 or 70% of employees would like home to be their primary workplace, and people are reporting on greater productivity, actually less distraction. Turns out that our kids are less distracting than our bosses or colleagues. Funny, but that's the situation.
That's true.
Of course, the saving time on commute that lets you do other things, not just work, but other things. And also the flexibility. You don't have to contain the work days and finish by 5 or 6 p.m. You can say, I want to take a break and I want to go back to work. I want to do, my exercise at lunchtime and take a 2 hours lunch break. And I have plenty of time to work in the evening and connect to other people. So I think it will change the way we work, hopefully for the good. I think I'm still missing the face-to-face interaction with people, but I must say that I've learned that the virtual world has a lot of things that I never thought that can happen in my lifetime, and they do happen.
Yeah. Wow, Gil, this is very insightful. We're coming to the end of our time slot here, but I've got one last question to wrap up our discussion. So I think a portion of this video, when you're predicting the cyber pandemic in the strength of it, I think will probably resurface later in the future, because I do believe that that's coming, and it's important that we learn to prepare for that. But if you can maybe, for closing the discussion, just kind of maybe share some of your thoughts and predictions for 2021. So what should we be expecting just for next year from a cybersecurity perspective?
First, I really, really hope, I don't know that it will happen, but I really, really hope it will be over the corona and we'll be able to resume business. I'd like to hope that, on one hand, people are expecting a downturn in the economy, which it affects everyone. On the other hand, I think the world, when it comes out of a crisis, people are bringing plenty of energy and plenty of livelihood to go back to life. So I'd like to think that. In terms of cyber, we do have to invest in securing everything we've opened up. The cloud, the IoT, mainly people working from home. We need to automate more. We need to consolidate more. We know that we don't have the teams that can maintain 20 or 30 security products, so we need to consolidate. We can't run and manage these dozens of servers that are just used for cybersecurity. So we need as much as we can to upgrade our security infrastructure, so that doesn't become our next bottleneck, and that actually continues to be an enabler as opposed to a bottleneck. And by the way, say maybe the last word, I'm very, very proud in all our customers, all our partners, all my colleagues for sustaining that. And I think the entire high-tech sector and the cyber sectors show the world that we can make a lot of changes, that we can adapt quickly, and we can keep the businesses running, and we can keep the economy running. It would have been easier to sit aside and say, let's wait, but I think everybody's trying to work as hard as they can, and that's really, really important. It keeps our psychology in a much better shape, and it keeps our economy in a much better shape. So I want to thank everyone for continuing to run the businesses and keep doing that. It's very, very important.
I echo those very same sentiments. I think the effects of COVID-19, I think, are relatively well known. The impact emotionally, mentally, and to the economy, we're still discovering. So I completely agree with your thoughts. So with that, Gil, we've come to the end of our discussion. I thank you very much for your time. Really, it was a pleasure to spend the last 20 minutes together with you. And I still owe you one, because I really appreciate how you and your team hosted us in Tel Aviv in the Holy Land last year. I hope that once the world returns to some new normal and we can travel again, hopefully I can return the favor and you come here to Canada, we can host you here.
Same here, and we are looking forward to host people again in Israel, and again, maybe to even, I mean, I can't think about the fact I used to travel twice a month, so I'm going to do an entire year without traveling. Never happened to me in my career, so
amazing.
Resume travel too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.